Right over the edge of the boat, the water contains, seemingly just under the surface, a ceaselessly moving network of reflected sunlight, through which a school of very tiny fish passes delightfully uncaught. And yet only a few yards from where we are moored, tackle shops sell the marvelous salmon and crabs with which this particular area abounds. This is the paradox of the ocean. Sand, flying spray, pebbles and shells, driftwood, sparkling water, space incredibly luminous, with cloud banks along horizons, underlying skies into which one's imagination can reach forever. But under the surface of both sky and water, there's the grim business of preying. Men and birds against fish, fish against fish. The tortuous process of life continuing by the painful transformation of one form into another. To creatures who don't anticipate and reflect imaginatively upon this holocaust of eating, being eaten, it's perhaps not so terrible. Skillful beyond all other animals, by being able to think in time and knowing the future. He dies before he's dead. He shrinks from the shark's teeth before they bite. He dreads the alien germ long, long before its banquet begins. Here is a gull that has picked a crab from a tide pool, sprawled now upon the sand. The crab shrinks from the walls of its shell, resounding to the tap, tap, tap of the gull's beak. Who's that knocking at my door? I suppose the shell of the crab, the clam or mussel, is the boundary of its universe. To put ourselves in their position, we should have to imagine a knocking sound, louder and louder, that doesn't come from anywhere in particular, from the door or the walls or the ceiling or the floor. Think of a knocking that comes from everywhere, that beats against the boundaries of space and consciousness, that comes as the intrusion of an utterly unknown dimension into our own familiar world. Let me in. Let me in. I yourself, you will become alive as me. We shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, on the morning when the last trumpet sounds. For behold, I am he that stands at the door and knocks. There's no way of getting around it, is there? The gull isn't rapacious or greedy. It's just that his being alive at all is the same thing as eating crabs. Seabirds are transformations of fish. Men are transformations of wheat, chickens, and steers. And the love for the food is the agony of the food. To object to this inseparability of pleasure and pain, life and death, is simply to object to existence.
To object to this is simply to object to existence. To object to this is simply to object to existence. Only man will reflect on all that is left, on pleasure and pain, on life and on death. To object to this is simply to object to existence.
But of course, we cannot help objecting when the time comes. Objecting to pain is pain. So far as we know, the gull and the fish don't philosophize. They enjoy life when they're eating it and hate it when being eaten. They don't reflect upon the process as a whole and say how rough it is that we have to work so hard for a living, or it's just hell having to watch out all the time for those gulls. I'm sure that in their world, this is something that just goes along with life, like having eyes or feet. But man, with his astonishing ability to stand aside from himself and think about himself, in short, to comment on life, man has done something which confuses his own existence down to its roots. For the more sensitive he is, the more man finds the very act of living in conflict with his moral conscience.
Is simply to object to existence. To object to this is simply to object to existence. Only man will reflect on all that is left, on pleasure and pain, on life and on death. To object to this is simply to object to existence.
Upon reflection, a universe so arranged that there is no way of living except by destroying other lives seems to be a hideous mistake, not a divine, but a devilish creation. Of course, there's the myth that once upon a time things were quite otherwise, that there was no death, that the lion lay down with the lamb. But that since then there has been a fall, a vast error, which has corrupted the whole of nature. All that must have been eons ago. Perhaps in some other galaxy, where the conditions of life were quite different. Or perhaps the ghastly mistake was just that step in man's evolution, which made it possible for him to comment, to reflect upon life as a whole. In being able to stand aside from life and think about it, he put himself outside it and found it alien.
So we're about to get started, and I'll put the music back on in a minute. I was just cleaning the school, sweeping the school and the mats here, and I saw a kid chasing geese outside, and that was funny. So yeah, it's a nice sunset outside. We're about to get started with this daily routine of meditation, yoga, martial arts. And right now we're going to do the full Ashtanga Yoga primary series. And somebody will come in here in a little bit and join us later, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with the 12 sun salutations. So on that note, we will begin, and I'll put the music back on. This is Alan Watts, Why I Love the Ocean, remixed by Akira the Don.
To objectiveless is simply to object to existence. Only man will reflect on all that is left, on pleasure and pain, on life and on death. To object to this is simply to object to existence. To object to this is simply to object to existence. To object to this is simply to object to existence. Only man will reflect on all that is left, on pleasure and pain, on life and on death. To object to this is simply to object to existence.
Perhaps thinking about the world and objecting to its whole principle are simply two aspects of the same mechanism. The very words suggest, don't they? Perhaps we must object to everything that becomes an object. But aren't there also times when we speak of something that we know as a subject? The subject of this book, the subject I am now studying. Would it be possible to subject to love instead of objecting to it? Is this playing with words, or does it possibly mean something? Now, if the gulls and the fish don't philosophize, they have no consciousness of life being either good as a whole or bad as a whole. So when we philosophize and pity the poor fish, that's just our problem. That's just our problem. From its own standpoint, the world of animals and insects doesn't find itself problematic at all. There's not the slightest evidence to suggest it. On the contrary, I'm inclined to feel that all these creatures really swing and go on living up to the very moment when the game is no longer worth the candle. I'm quite sure they don't lecture each other about their duties, or worry about where they're going when they're dead. Isn't it then rather an enormous relief for us men to see that the plant and animal world is no problem to itself, and that we are wasting intellectual energy in making moral judgments about it? Now, if the gulls and the fish don't philosophize, they have no consciousness of life being either good as a whole or bad as a whole. So when we philosophize and pity the poor fish, that's just our problem. That's just our problem. Now, if the gulls and the fish don't philosophize, they have no consciousness of life being either good as a whole or bad as a whole. So when we philosophize and pity the poor fish, that's just our problem. That's just our problem. course, we can't return to the unreflective consciousness of the animal world without becoming animals. To be human is precisely to have that extra circuit of consciousness which enables us to know that we know, and thus to take an attitude to all that we experience. The mistake that we've made, and this, if anything, is the fall of man, is to suppose that that extra circuit, that ability to take an attitude to life as a whole, is the same as actually standing aside and being separate from what we see. That it knows is one's essential self. That, in other words, our personal identity is entirely on the side of the commentator. We forget that self-consciousness is simply a subordinate part and instrument of our being, a sort of mental counterpart to the finger-thumb opposition of the human hand, and which is you. Finger or the thumb? We seem to feel that which knows that it knows is one's essential self. But we can't return to the animal world without losing self-consciousness. Look at the stages of differentiation. First, the organism from its environment, and with this, knowledge of the environment. Second, the distinction of knowing knowledge from knowledge itself. But all this, like the finger-thumb opposition, is a difference which does not divide. The thumb isn't floating in the air alongside the rest of the hand. At their roots, they're joined. And at our roots, we are joined to the whole subject of nature. We seem to feel that which knows that it knows is one's essential self. But we can't return to the animal world without losing self-consciousness. We seem to feel that which knows that it knows is one's essential self. But we can't return to the animal world without losing self-consciousness. Of course, you may say that nature or the universe is just a big abstraction. But tell me, is an orange just an abstraction from its component molecules? I think our difficulty is that our consciousness is too superficial, as if all our sensation were in the tips of the fingers and not in the palm. Our comments on life are insufficiently balanced by the clear sensation that what we are talking about is ourselves, and ourselves in a sense far more basic and real than that extra circuit which knows knowing.
This
fact that we move freely on the earth and aren't rooted to it in the same way as trees to the ground and fingers to the hand. Were we as spatially distant from the earth as one atom of an orange from another, I suppose we should be somewhere out by the moon. Now we know that the atom, molecule, cell, or subordinate organ of any particular organism is what it is by virtue of its place and its membership in the pattern of the whole. Blood in a test tube is rapidly ceasing to be the same thing as blood in veins. In the same way, man must beware lest in cutting himself off psychically from the world that he sees, and so isolating the subject from the object, lest in doing this he rapidly ceases to be man. So I think this is why I love the ocean. It's the most difficult part of nature to mess up with emblem and symptom of man's dissociative consciousness.
This is Alan Watts. Talking about how the ocean relates to consciousness. Itself versus the totality. So this is number 20 for me. We'll just keep going from here.
It's an environment in which the awareness of our roots can awaken, in which space, so real because of the light and color, can be seen to be joining things instead of separating. Yes. And I've just discovered that knocking on the wall of space and consciousness was my own heart beating.
That's good. I can see you pushing the pace, pushing yourself, and still taking appropriate modifications for the limits you're dealing with. You're doing a lot.
Yeah, and I can move into that into more, which is nice.
why I love the ocean.
It's funny because the yoga is more gentle, but we're more rigid in our structure for the class, right? Kind of in this. But I also, if I see you doing your own thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to try to micromanage your practice because you know what you need. So, forward fold. Bending in the knees. Halfway up, and fold again. Try to go a little deeper. Let gravity and breath do the work.
Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place.
Akira.
Just keep moving. You will come to a better place. Just keep moving. You will come to a better place. It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. Understanding others, the other elements, and the other nation will help you become whole. It is usually best to admit mistakes when they occur, and to seek to restore honor. Perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love. Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place. Just keep moving. You will come to a better place. Just keep moving. You will come to a better place.
People see me and think I'm weak. They want to take care of me. But I can take care of myself by myself.
You sound like my nephew. Always thinking you need to do things on your own without anyone's support. There is nothing wrong with letting people who love you help you. There is nothing wrong with letting people who love you help you. Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, better place. Just keep moving.
So why do
You will come to a better place.
Akira. One thing I wanted to say is, don't be fooled by the internet. Don't be fooled by the internet. It's cool to get on the computer, but don't let the computer get on you. Cool to use the computer, don't let the computer use you. Y'all saw The Matrix. Y'all saw The Matrix. There's a war going on, the battlefield's in the mind, and the prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. There's a war going on, the battlefield's in the mind, and the prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. There's a war going on, the battlefield's in the mind, and the prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. There's a war going on, the battlefield's in the mind, and the prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. The prize is the soul. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful.
Speaking of balance, like I'm a combat veteran, martial artist, jiu-jitsu champion, and all that stuff. And there's a guy at work who's trying to pick a fight with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, I'm just gonna call the cops. I'm like, I need this job.
Yeah.
I'm not
First
trying
step
to.
of being a martial artist is know when not to fight.
I mean, he's a big dude and he's got a gun, I'm pretty sure. But he's mad because I tell the boss, like, hey, this guy didn't do any of his jobs, any of his side work, and just left. He basically sabotages the next shift if the person is somebody who the new boss hired because he doesn't like the new boss, right?
So he's a mutineer.
Take this kiss upon the brow,
So
hide
yeah,
it
I'm
high
doing it as
from
a
you
team
now.
now.
This much let me avow.
But he won't do it.
You are not wrong, you
they're slowly
deem
hiring
that
new
my
people and
days
training
have
them
been a
up to
dream.
fire this
You
guy.
have hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none. Is it that for the last God? In a vision or in none, is it that for the last
Last
God?
night I got to work and he's all like, keep my name out your mouth and
All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream of a self-tormented show. And I hold it in my hand. It rains off the golden sand. Have you yet had it through my fingers to the deep? While I weep, while I weep. Oh God, I cannot grasp them with its tight clasp. Oh God, I cannot say one from the pitiless way. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream.
Secrets and the undermining, and so luckily they can't meet the salary I make now, and so I'm just like, well, that puts it on a holding pattern, and it might get better there.
Yeah.
And so I didn't totally kill the opportunity, but I've tabled it.
So now we're doing these chair pose after you balance both sides, right? Make sure you do both sides of what you're doing. The chair. And I'm gonna turn it down so I can demonstrate for the friends who can't make it here. Not trying to chat around it. This guy, he is trying to be like, oh hey, I didn't do any of this side work because they didn't do it on my shift before, so you shouldn't do it either. And he's trying to create a cascading problem for the boss who he kept in. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel you. But when he leaves, I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And I wash all the dishes and do all the prep. It would be one thing if it was an oppressive boss doing bad things, but it's not. They fired a crooked boss that was like stealing and embezzling and replaced that one with a decent person, and that's the person who hired me.
Right.
Good family guy. Good father. And I'm gonna show my appreciation to him doing a good job. I don't have time for all the church stuff. So after the deal off, I made a few phone calls, recorded the video off the security camera, send it to the higher ups and to the police officer. Because I'm like, I like this job, I need this job, I like the location between the Kung Fu school and my home.
What part of town do you live in?
I live right down here.
Okay.
Like literally 5 minutes away. on this
Yeah, I
way.
live on Tharp and Bainbridge.
But I'm not gonna let somebody bully me or beat me into an ignorant moment.
Hmm?
I'm not gonna let a coworker bully me, run me off, or bait me into an ignorant moment.
Not even a confrontation.
Like, I train with better people every day. I don't need to prove myself to them.
Hmm?
I said I train with better people every day. I don't need to prove myself beating up a big dude at work
Yeah.
or a drunk old homestead that comes and comes to the office. I'm not trying to defend myself like that. Like iron sharpens iron. I'm trying to
Hmm?
iron sharpens iron. I'd rather train with skilled people and stay sharp in case I really need it.
That's one thing I appreciate about you too is people respect each other's, you know, we're here for the long haul. We're not here to show off and like 20 years later we'll, I mean like, even like when I used to listen to jujitsu, like, some of these schools are all different, you know, some of them, it's like the black belts are going up there and they're so busted up, and I'm like, what's the point of that?
And you see it and you're like, okay.
I mean, if you got in that many fights, you wouldn't be that busted up.
Yeah, like there's a way that you can train intensely without training in a dangerous way. And George St. Pierre talks about that. But he also will every now and then practice with the ball just for the experience. But not all the time. That's why I like constantly in small doses. But we're just gonna do the postures one after another. So we can end at 7:30, so we just have like
Okay.
7:30.
Okay. That's good.
So if you want to lay down and hug one knee and with the other ankle across your knee, it'll be like the standing thing. And it's getting the same thing.
Like that?
Yeah. But then the other knee you pull into your chest. Right there contract your abdomen and take deep breaths. So that the breath stretches the part that's in front of you. Gently, without external force, it's just internal breathing. And then we're tuning down, the music tuning down, intensity for the second half of the practice. I tried to tone the playlist so that we were able to feel better after singing or something. So it gets you thinking, it gets you moving. I call it philosophy stuff instead of philosophy.
It's interesting, a person always like, they talk about that person not going around. They get like some sort of rush off of it.
Because they don't fight fighters. They don't train with really good martial artists. They don't take any stuff out of their system. And then so they want to act up when the ego gets bruised. And part of the reason I'm talking about it now is to talk about it on my live stream, on video, so that if something happens to me, they can be like, oh, look, there's this video from talking about it on yoga.
Send it to me too.
There's all these text messages with videos and pictures and screenshots of the conversation between the boss and the HR and the police officer in case you guys try to attack me at work. The kitchen's a dangerous place. You've got boiling oil, you've got flaming surfaces, you've got knives all over the place. I'm pretty sure this dude's got a gun. But this is the same guy who I think was trying to run me off the road a few weeks ago on a Sunday on Park right there at the intersection down the hill. And he was keeping pace with me on my electric bike on the sidewalk. And he's on the road honking at me. There's cars stuck up behind him. The same truck he has at work. And I'm looking at this, I didn't recognize him at first. And I'm like, what the fuck? And as soon as I turned to look to be like, what do you want? I hit a mailbox and flipped over my handlebars, and I did a brake fall, and I bounced back up and was like, fuck it. Damn, that hurt. And I got on the bike and I went to work because I was sore. And at work I was like, dude. And when I pulled in there was a red truck, the same red truck. And he saw me and he pulled off real quick, and I took a picture of him before he pulled out. And was like, who is this? And I showed it to the boss that was there from the other store. And he was like, oh, that's Big E, that's Eric. And I'm like, well, I hope he gets kidney stones, because that won't kill him or whatever. And ever since then, the guy's like, you gotta stop lying about me saying that I'm doing that. Why are you sending a picture of your truck to the boss? So that was your truck. I'm like, well, no, it wasn't you that did that. I'm like, but you said I sent a picture of your truck to the boss. He's like, stop bringing me that. So he was doing pretty stuff. I think he is a potentially dangerous person outside of the place. But that's what was starting to back then. That's probably what came from a few weeks ago. I was feeling it again today after that recent election being this thing. Really looking forward to be able to wring that drama out of my body. And yeah, if you want to sit on your heel, if you've done both sides, that's what So the toes go forward and the knees out. Well, your knees out like normal. Right? So the toes should kind of, your toes should hug your thigh, and then your heel is where it is, you know?
Okay.
When I first started doing this, it was like sitting on a rock. And I was like, oh. But after a few years, it's gotten a lot more comfortable because the connective tissue has opened up. I'm gonna keep this track going because it's nice and chill. I've been listening to this one chill yoga flute music song for so long. I mean, if you want to just do the regular one on the other side, you can do both sides. But yeah, I strongly associate this song with the yoga practice and relaxing it out. It's something I recommend. If you just look at yoga flute music, this will pop up. And it is a really nice addition to the practice. Switch. After this, we're going to do this series of full postures holding the knee to the chest. And the first two are straight forward, and the second two are twisted. Manage to sweep everything together for practice. just sitting up like this.
Let me try this.
Yeah.
See how it does.
But the point is to put your knee, your thigh against your abdomen on one side so that it massages the internal.
This side is grumpy, so I'm just gonna.
Oh yeah. Make sure you do the other side the same way, because you don't want to create an imbalance. The temptation is to like go deeper on the side that's not injured or inflamed, but that's not a good idea. It would be like lifting weights where you use more on one arm than the other. So if you want to try ankle across the thigh again, and pull it in.
Yeah, I'm gonna let it go because
Okay.
it's too grumpy about everything right now. But it feels like if I can get my hand less long.
Yeah.
Freak it out.
How do you feel about the legs on the ground and sitting up with your
Like this,
Yeah,
and then like
just folding.
this.
No, just folding. If you're trying to rest the hip right now, instead of staying with the legs up to the wall, because we'll do that later for sure. But if you're working on the hamstrings, just sitting up there, toes towards your nose, sitting up straight, and your hands next to your hips,
Right here.
but roll out your shoulders. And you feel it stretch there? So just breathe into that, and that's good enough, you know? And then bring the next foot forward. Forward. And try to go a little forward. Gravity. There's been years where I had training injuries and fight club injuries and pins and surgery. And I got a belly and I got into yoga and I was just like, you know, because I see all these different people all around me and I'm like, man, fuck these guys. I'm trying to get there. And, but it just takes practice and you'll, you know, the folding helps burn it, loosen it up, and then open the back on the hamstrings. And just even, like there was years where I was just here, especially right after the Army. I just partied for like a year after the Army. I just got,
How many years were you in there?
I wasn't in the Army. I went AWOL because the dudes in my unit were making war crimes. And I didn't want to be part of it, and no one was listening to me when I spoke up. And that's part of the reason I went to Syria outside of the U.S. government with the international volunteers, because I did make a vow to fight against terrorists, and I wanted to keep my word and restore my honor because I got kicked out for going AWOL. But when I tell them why I went AWOL, I'm like, I'm not deploying with these guys that can jump in the barracks and brag about all the rape and pillage and murder they did in Afghanistan in the 82nd Airborne. And I was like, man, you know, we're airborne infantry. I wanted to be a hero in England. And now I'm in this unit of war criminals. They weren't all bad, but the squad I was in was a bad squad. They were like the goon squad. That if there was like a dirty job that they would need it done, but they knew like the village was sympathetic to the Taliban, they would send these guys to go just destroy the whole village, kill everyone in there at the night. And I didn't want to be part of that. And the stories they told me, I was like, oh man. So, I was in for about a year and a half in the 82nd Airborne, and after that, I hitchhiked around the country. I joined the hippies in the woods, and I found the Hare Krishnas, and they had free yoga and free vegetarian food. So I linked up. I had already become a yoga teacher after the Army. I had been training Mantis Kung Fu and Jiu-Jitsu. And then the Hare Krishnas brought me here, and after training here for a few years, I went to Syria with the YPG International against ISIS Kurds who were fighting against ISIS.
They're badass.
Yeah, but right now, basically, Trump gave his blessing to this Al-Qaeda guy to become the new Syrian president. He freed all of the ISIS prisoners that we had captured and locked up and integrated them into the Syrian army. And now the Syrian army, with a whole division of jihadis, is attacking the Kurds. They've got like an ISIS division. They are bulldozing the Kurds all the time.
I know my kind of brother figure and my mother figure, they both lived in Turkey and really got to know the Kurds. They've been torn up about.
Yeah. Turkey loves to contribute to that division, and they, like when I was on the front lines, every jihadi that we smoked had Turkish things. Turkish passport, Turkish visas, weapons, Turkish military weapons, but ISIS flags and ISIS paraphernalia and patches. And they were very much being supplied and funded by the Turkish military. They had Korean tanks, Turkish military Korean tanks in an IED factory. It's like a little warehouse. We say factory. It's a little warehouse with a lathe and machinery equipment for bending metal and stuffing mortars full of or shells that just random things full of explosives. And that's where they were making their bombs into Arizona. But they had rows of Turkish military issued Korean tanks. So we were going to use this, and if we had hit that building with an airstrike, we would have gassed ourselves with Korean, not knowing. I took pictures of that, and I posted it online and sent it to the commanders. It's a very complicated situation, but I am sympathetic to the Kurds because they're the most freedom-loving, revolutionary-minded people with like a really interesting, pure form of democracy. But they sided with the U.S. military, knowing that the U.S. military betrays them every 20 years or so. Like they used the Kurds to fight against the Nazis in the desert, and to great effect, and then left them. And a lot of the Arabs with the very strict, what would be the predecessors of modern day jihadis, not the normal Muslims, but the extremists back then, did align themselves with the Nazis. And when they left the Kurds at the mercy of those people. And then again with Saddam twice in the Gulf Wars.
I don't know exactly what happened. That's really upset. Something that happened maybe when the first Trump term.
Yeah, he pulled it. That's when I was there. I left because when I was doing Praying Mantis Kung Fu, there was a special forces guy who I trained with at the school, Lake Park Kung Fu, 8-step Praying Mantis in South Florida. And there was a special forces guy, his former SF, he fought in Afghanistan, and he trained there. He lost a lot of weight. After he got injured, when he got out, he gained weight and he lost it in Mantis and fighting in tournaments. But he was messaging me on Facebook when I was in Philadelphia, in Syria, the Thomas zone, and he was telling me, hey, I you need to get out of there ASAP because they're about to pull out the American troops and you're not going to have any backup and Turkey's going to start bombing and invading. And so I told the Kurds about this. And at the same time, my dad was there, and I had already been planning to go home to see my dad before he died. But that's exactly what happened. And they survived. They're going to survive this too. They're going to retreat to the mountains with their toughest survivors into the tunnels. Have you ever seen or read Dune?
No.
It's a great fiction about like Middle Eastern culture and the sci-fi setting. But my point was that there are tunnels under cities that are bigger than the cities. They have cities underneath the cities, full of weapons, and they have like anti-aircraft artillery on railroad tracks that can go from one barn, and they come up, and the roof of the barn will slide back, and they can shoot down fighter jets, and then they can pull that thing back underground, close the roof, slide it down the road, and pop up under another barn. And yeah, the Kurds are not going anywhere. They're going to be okay. They're going to suffer because of the games of the Epstein class trying to distract everybody from what's going on. But at the same time, they're going to retreat to the mountains like they always do, retreat to the caves, and anyone who goes down there or up there is not coming back. And it was not helping them. Like, all of the empires of the world, like they call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires, you know, for a reason. And the Kurds are similar to the Afghan people that way, where you can't crush a people with airstrikes. You'd have to go down there on the ground, door to door. And the Kurds know that. And so they put a gun behind every door. And their grandmas and their young women and everybody's fighting. They're tough people. I was just watching a podcast last night about the mistakes that they've made that led them to where they are now. And it's like, well, they trusted somebody who habitually betrays them, which is the U.S. government. And they gave up their ideology, their framework of ideas that inspired them in order to align themselves with the U.S. government. And then they had a really good international program going on where they were inspiring the world. And people like me were coming there to join them because we were deeply moved by these ideas, by this ideology of direct democracy and environmentalism and feminism. And then after that, after 2018, they basically withdrew their international program and started appealing only to Kurdish people in different Kurdish regions, but they should have been appealing to the massive Arabs in the international community and to join their struggle. But there's a lot of bad blood between the Kurds and the Arabs because of like things like polygamy and child marriage.
Is it what?
In the Arab culture, there's a lot of polygamy and child marriage and arranged marriage, and the Kurds have always violently resisted that to the point that like the worst of the jihadi-minded types are trying to capture Kurdish women as like a prize of like, oh, they're the rarest and the toughest, and they don't go for our whole program, you know, arranged marriage and child marriage. So the worst of the jihadis really prized these Kurdish women in a sick way. Yeah, and but that makes them fight to the death too, and then they're afraid of them because they know these Kurdish ladies would probably blow themselves up and be captured by a jihadi. So one leg at a time, right? If you bend your knee, can you open the hip? Yeah, I've seen grandpas on the front lines waddling their way towards the heaviest part of the fighting. They know they're not going to survive the battle because they're too slow and couldn't strike, but they're still going. And it's still things that the enemy has to worry about. Because a gun is a gun and a bullet's a bullet, and old people tend to be really good shots. So you see a lot of the old Kurdish men and women out there fighting too, with the young people. But it's funny, in 2019, I was writing an essay predicting that Trump was going to use jihadi Al-Qaeda elements against his enemies when he became the president again. Because I was like, he's definitely going to try to be president again. And people were like, oh, it's illegal, you can't. It's like, the law doesn't matter. The law is a spider web that catches the poor, and the rich just burst right through it.
Exactly.
So both things, if you want to use the law, God needs to be up. Either way. But there's too many similarities between the following religious radicals and the jihadi for them to not take an alignment under the God of Abraham. They were definitely gonna see eye to eye on some Epstein things. The far right religious radicals and the jihadis. Because there's like, all those files are out there. And everybody can see it. Everybody knows what's real now. And before it was like, oh, it's this gross conspiracy
And
theory.
there's still 3 million that haven't been shown.
And now we know it's real for sure. And the worst things, the worst possible nightmares are real. And they're doing it. And there is a base of people who still support that guy. And those are the kind of people who, if ISIS was a Christian militia, they would join them. Cutting off heads and everything. Suicide bombers.
So
and all
what?
that. Even though they're doing beheadings and suicide bombings, if ISIS was a Christian militia, there is a base of Trump supporters who would join them.
That's what's so disturbing. I mean, in many ways, that's one of the reasons I'm so thankful for the studio right now. Is like, you think about the beginning of the Shaolin Temple, you know? People had to train, even though many people, well, monks and the nuns decided to train. And sometimes when it's this crazy, it's the best thing to do is just come together as a community and train.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they moved up here because I wouldn't have seen it every day and think about, and then today I was thinking, when I first came to Tallahassee, I was living in a little yoga studio in Railroad Square with the Hare Krishna guy that brought me here. And we were living like master and student yoga people, and he was teaching me about different kinds of meditation and yoga. But he was annoyed because my yoga practice is advanced, and he was getting older and he couldn't do stuff anymore. But he also didn't do the physical yoga very much. But anyway, eventually we parted ways and I started doing Ashtanga yoga, but I saw Sifu's Kung Fu school next door to his little studio, which is now a tattoo place. And I started practicing with Sifu while I was struggling to find work and housing here. And they still let me come train with my little begging money and my hungry veteran son until I found work and got off the street. But then I got really into jiu-jitsu and I had some bad experiences at like a few toxic schools here before I found a good jiu-jitsu school.
Which one did you like?
Well, I mean, all of them are kind of on the far right. There's,
Haven't you noticed that? Isn't that crazy that that happened?
well, they do that on purpose, and they were trying to run me off even at the good one. But I was just determined because I was focused on competing, and I would just turn those things into a rivalry on the mats. And I never talked shit or talked about politics at jiu-jitsu, and other people would try to get me to, and I would be like, hey bro, just shut the fuck up and roll. Like, didn't you come here to train? And they would be like, oh, yeah. And then I would, you know, put that energy into the roll. But, you go get a gold medal. And be like, how many gold medals do you have, bro? And they don't like to hear that, but that's what he needed to hear. So I should have just stuck with Sifu the whole time from the beginning, because this is the kind of environment that I was looking for.
I tried, like, I did jiu-jitsu with my Wing Chun teacher first. And I was much, much younger. It was 20-some years ago. And because I started first with Tai Chi, and that was just to calm myself down. It was just, I couldn't keep myself in a good place. And then my Tai Chi teacher was leaving, and so I joined his. I talked him into letting me join Rex's Kung Fu, because he was doing it at the house, and it was kind of an invitation only type thing, you know. And so I my teacher left, and my Tai Chi teacher, and I was with Rex for years, and he wanted me to do. He was started getting into jiu-jitsu, and he wanted me to do it with. And I was like, I'm not wrestling any guys. And then a woman came, and he's like, could you just work with her? She's small, she's petite. And I was like, okay. And then I was hooked from the beginning. But that studio, and then we got it, and then Rex brought in another teacher at one point. And he was really, really good. Had a good energy. But I haven't found that luck with the other jiu-jitsu studios. They kept getting injured, and I was like, no, I'm not here to get injured. I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they're all right.
like I wanted to.
But I did see the culmination, because like my teachers, the teacher that Rex brought in, my teacher's teacher was Royce Gracie, and my teacher was one of his special students. He would go to the seminars and stuff with Royce, and you know, Royce and his brother started UFC, and Royce fought, well, the Gracie family, Royce fought in the first 4 UFCs. But I was into the UFC at the beginning, and then to see the way it changed was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it became like professional wrestling. But they're still fighting.
Sort of tying in with the far right ideology, you know?
There's a really good documentary called Fighting in the Age of Loneliness, and they tie everything together talking about that. And And basically, the short version is Trump owns the casinos where they hold their events. That's the short version. And then also far-right people could see the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu and MMA. So they start sending their gang members to the schools to train. There's a skinhead that's like openly skinhead at Train Fight Win here in Tallahassee. When I was living at a jiu-jitsu school, I started to like part ways with them. And the teacher there would be like, "You're not one of those Antifa people, social justice warriors, are you, Dan?" And I'm like, I mean, like that's how I feel about things. I want to do stuff. But when I moved from there to training at the Zuko Alliance Jiu-Jitsu School, that's when I started going to protests. Not because I wanted to, because FSU students were asking me to come protect them at protests. And I was like, all right, and so things would happen. There was a group of 3 neo-Nazis that shot at us at the protest against Richard Spencer in Gainesville. And that's pretty much how I became radicalized against the far right, was because they started it by shooting at me and my friends at a protest. And that's in the news. If you Google Dan Baker Gainesville Nazi shooting, it's there. That's an intense incident. And after that, shortly after that, I went to
Went to what?
to Syria to fight against ISIS. And I've pretty much decided that I was on the left since 2016 because the left is divided. A lot of people didn't want Hillary because a lot of the Democrats are in the Epstein files, and that was a thing back then too. People were talking about it. Dude was in trouble since like 2008. Epstein was.
But that was the great thing about it. It's like, now that they're out, they're like,
It's been
he
over
was
20
convicted.
years.
They knew, and they went and hung out with him afterwards.
And it's been over 20 years and people have known. And they were still going to hang out and do things, terrible things. But, and that's why Hillary lost, and that's why the Democrats have been losing, is because their game has been, well, it's either us or Trump. And it's like, okay, but with Trump, there might be a revolution because of the violent reaction to his oppression, at least. But when it's the Democrats, things are a little bit, they're politely oppressive. They'll politely fly your kids off to Epstein Island. You know, and it's like, that's not a good solution either. This is not a compromise. Nobody wants that. But there needs to be more options.
It's amazing that they, I mean, it's still not there, but that you ended up with like the Democrats and Boberg, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, and Mace that moved sides.
To turn against Trump.
Yeah. To open it up.
When people are still going to work every day like nothing's changed because we have to survive, because everybody's living paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, even people who are doing well off are like, you know, a few paychecks away from, you know, one medical emergency, you know, one interaction with the police from a dire situation. And in that kind of situation, it's hard for people to go do something about, you know, all of these terrible people. And that's an intentional facet of the system that we live under. And that's, you know, I've been calling myself an anarchist my whole life because I don't like either politician. And any politicians, I think they're all people who don't work for a living. And, you know, only people who work for a living should be taking turns as leaders of the country in a real job that contributes to the economy. But I also felt like recently the anarchists are not well organized enough to actually do anything to stop these people from abusing the children, from, you know, making everyone into wage slaves. So I became a communist, ideologically. You know, I am not going to be out rioting or anything like that. I'm very much an armchair philosopher. I've been blown up enough times and been in enough fights to be, too old to be out there fighting in the streets. But what I can do is share ideas and perspectives and propagandize and agitate and spread information from the perspective of like being anti-Stalinist, not pro-dictator. Because what I saw in Rojava was a functional form of democratic socialism.
With the Kurds?
Yeah. And that was really inspiring. Free war and distributes, fruits and veggies, carbs and proteins, even cigarettes and lighters and soap and razors, shaving cream and pen and paper, propane tanks and propane burners to everybody. Everybody's got housing, everybody's got healthcare. You just walk into the hospital and, they do what they can with the resources they have in a war zone, but everybody's doing their best to make sure everybody's needs are met. And they have a thriving market in the towns and cities where everybody's got, if they want it, a job and a PlayStation or an Xbox and a pickup truck with spinning rims and undercarriage lights and a sound system and smartphones, So it's not like you hear people say, oh, socialists don't have nice things. Like Kurds in a war zone have nice things, practicing socialism. It's just propaganda for people to have perspective because they've never traveled around the world. But, so that's pretty much it for the yoga practice.